Welcome back to Startups Horror Stories series, where we interview CEOs of companies. Here we have Dafne Meneses, CEO of Hei Dingo. Welcome. Thank you for coming here.
Thank you.
Today. So I'd like to ask, could you like to talk to us a little bit about your company before we start?
Yeah. Hei Dingo helps women around the world, specifically that have moved across countries, to inform themselves better, to prepare themselves for job seeking, entrepreneurship with personal brand, specifically regional data. And we support them with informing them what stands out for their competitive market industry data. Yeah.
Thank you. So, partners and investors. Working with partners is essential, but can sometimes lead to unexpected turns. Can you share an example when a partnership went wrong or even turned into a nightmare?
Yes, I think when a partnership can be in the same industry as one is, and they start doing like maybe mentorship in my case or coaching that we were planning to do, specifically word by word that was stated in our business plan. It was a nightmare indeed because we were preparing and we didn't have enough team members to help us with, but this partnership did. And that was very, let's say, sad for everyone because we knew we couldn't compete with them.
What have you learned about choosing the right collaborators for Hei Dingo's mission of equal pay for women in tech?
It's so super important to be on the same page, so having the same mission. In our case, it's helping women specifically. And at some point, we wanted to work with not only women, because my current team is based with only women, international especially, and we wanted to open up to more men, so being more inclusive too. And in some way, they wanted to move away from the mission. So even though I was the one indicating what the mission and vision was, still the team members are also part of where the company goes. So that is something very important, that we're all on the same page.
Investors are critical in a startup. However, meeting them can be terrifying at times. What was the most awkward or uncomfortable investor meeting you happened to be a part of?
This is a very interesting question because we were part of the QS Spring Batch and we were matched with investors that were really interested in our one-pager, for example. And one investor from Estonia, that's all I'll say,
Sure,
was very interested in having revenue share because they really liked where we were heading with the matchmaking of women going to work for companies. And they liked how we were doing our platform. But he had already invested in a very similar startup. So in a way, he wanted to know more of our secret sauce. And that got very, very scary. So we did report it. And we were just told to not say anything anymore. So that was helpful in some sense. That was interesting.
Do you have your own spooky experience to pitching to investors?
Okay, the scariest one is when you have to pitch for the first time and be the first one. I completely forgot everything. And I was so nervous that I guess I didn't remember what to say. Like in that moment, I froze. And I just felt like everyone was looking at me. So in that moment, how do you get things going again? And what's your mission? What are you doing? Why do you want money? It's freaky, but with practice and perseverance, you can do anything. And now I can pitch without getting into panic mode.
Yeah, I suppose it's all about confidence at the end of the day. You know, you build up to it. You know, it's something.
Yeah, exactly.
So, as for the challenges, the gender pay gap is a sensitive topic. As a founder focused on empowering women in tech, what specific obstacles did you encounter that were unique to addressing gender equality in the workplace?
The biased mindset that many people in hiring manager positions, so leaderships and even CEOs today, they don't understand what they're actually stating that some kind of women are. So if we're from a very Latin American background, they have a specific mindset that might automatically say, oh, they are not capable of doing things. Or if they do not understand what the industry they come from and how the skills can adapt, that automatically makes the pay gap huge, because they have to employ them and they give them only offers for internships or junior positions when they are seniors, for example. So that's something huge that I found, and I didn't even think that would be here in Finland.
But it still was.
It's still going on, yes.
And is it very different, the approach, when it comes to different, like Latin America, as opposed to this gender pay gap in Finland?
I mean, I guess a good question, because I am from Mexico and I'm working in tech. I never got that kind of maybe pay gap that I had seen here, because I haven't had that experience, but that I've seen happen a lot. And when it comes to comparing Latin America to Europe, it's kind of impressive that that's still happening here, because that's what it's sold in other parts of the world, that here it doesn't happen. But
I see what you mean, yeah, because I also have this impression that it's, here it doesn't exist at all. But it's interesting that you say in Latin America, and here too it actually does. So. What were some of the biggest challenges you faced in building Hei Dingo so far?
Focus. When there's so many things that you want to achieve and you get excited to obtain many milestones, because that's something that everyone is always asking you, what have you achieved this month, last week? You can't do it all. So you have to really focus. And that's a challenge for me still, because I get excited to do everything. But from what we have learned today, you have to focus on what people want and what people want to pay for. So not only B2C or B2B, but actually something that's valuable to innovate. That's what I would say.
If you could go back in time and give your past self a warning about building a startup, what would it be?
Many things. I think I would say to not be scared to speak up about it, because I started speaking loudly about Hei Dingo way after knowing the name and how the branding was going to be, because I have a marketing mindset. And only when I had the name, I started saying, okay, this is what we're doing. And you shouldn't be, like, as a founder, you shouldn't care about what the name or the colors are. You should care about what you're fixing or what problem you're solving. So from there, you should just say, I am fixing or trying to fix this.
Interesting. So, as a culture, this is an interesting topic, and since, like you say, you're from Latin America, we know that you used to work in Mexico. How would you say the ecosystem differs from the one we have in Finland?
Yeah, good question. That's something that we're also trying to innovate around, regional data. And currently, I've been interviewing more women in entrepreneurial industries, and also other startup founders. And they all say that which I share too, that if we would know how it's better to be shy and not be so loud, because as a Mexican, I can be excited about things in my hands always. Also, maybe Spanish people, and I've talked to many Russians that are also very happy. If you are a little bit more shy and to yourselves in meeting rooms or in places where, it can be more professional, in some sense, you are more respected, because you respect others' personal environment. So I would have liked to learn that earlier. And that is what's most different from where I come from professionally.
I suppose it can go both ways, where being more expressive at times can actually be a benefit. And then at times it can perhaps work against you, where you maybe come across quite silly. I don't know. So lessons learned and reflections. People in the startup world often learn more about the things that go wrong than from success. What's the biggest lesson you've learned from a mistake or a failure?
Letters of intent. So if you're focused on business-to-business business models, secure those letters of intent, because that's something that I didn't think would be so critical. And if you are a startup, you will go for investors, and those will define everything. They will believe you. Others will want to accompany your journey too. And the fact that one company or one individual, as a letter of intent, joins you, just makes others around them want to join you too. So I would say letters of intent. Now,
so to keep the Halloween spirit alive, If Hey Dingo were a horror movie, what would it be called?
I
Could it be an existing movie or make up a name?
Yeah, so I'm thinking because a dingo is from Australia, it's always hunting. And I've recently heard a TikTok story that dingoes literally eat babies. So I would think something around hunting, biased mindsets, something like that.
What advice would you give to aspiring founders so they can avoid their own startup horror stories? Maybe what investor not to go for?
Yeah. I think even if investors, as I mentioned, might be scary and might want to see your pitch deck and pass it around, it happens a lot. I would say go for it because you never know what you'll learn from those conversations. So you should talk about it all the time in the business environment, especially in the startup ecosystem, because you might see or find something that you didn't think about. And even if they get to steal it, if you do it first, no one's going to compete. There's a lot of competition already in the world, but no one competes enough unless you do the work. Yeah.
Completely agree. Dafne, thank you for coming on to this startup horror stories interview. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.